Okay, welcome back. Hello, students. Welcome back to our second video on chapter 2 Methods of Inquiry in Psychology. Hope so, you all are well. Okay, so in our last video, we explored the step of psychological inquiry and got a quick review of the different methods used by psychologists. Today, we were going to take a deep dive into two important methods, observation method and experimental method, right? So basically, any idea about observation method? Okay, no problem. So basically, it is very powerful method of psychological inquiry. It involves the selection of a particular behavior, recording the selected behavior using symbols, photographs and analysis of the recorded behavior. There are three steps. First of all, you would select which behavior you observed, and then recording. The last is analysis of data. So there are three steps for observation method: selection, recording, analysis of data. Okay, so what is the purpose for observation method? To describe behavior as it naturally occurs. So observation means watching someone's behavior in a systematic way, either in a natural setting or in a controlled environment. It is one of the oldest and most basic ways to study human behavior. Type of observation: naturalistic versus controlled, and non-participation versus participation observation. So basically, naturalistic observation is the psychologist observe behavior in the subject natural environment without any interference. For example, imagine a psychologist is studying how children interact with each other on a playground. She sits quietly and watches about without interrupting or letting them know they are being observed. So this is example of naturalistic observation. This helps capture real and spontaneous behavior. So basically, this is the example of also non-participation observation, because researcher observed through far. Okay, so another is control observation. Behavior is observed in a planned and controlled setting like a laboratory. Variables can be managed. This is a control observation. Example, a child is placed in a room with toy and another child. The psychologist observes how the child shared toys. This allows more structured data collection. And participation observation is basically researcher is also part of this observation. Okay, so key features of observation can be participant, observer is involved, or non-participation observation, observer is just watching. The behavior is recorded objectively and systematically, requires careful planning and trained observer, otherwise your data is biased. Okay, so the observation methods, merits and demerits, disadvantage or advantage. Enables the researcher to study people and their behavior, this is the one merit, can provide in-depth information about behavior to be observed. Another advantage is direct way to study behavior, useful when people can't express themselves well, like infant or animal. Provides rich, detailed information. And there are some limitations or demerit also there. It is the time consuming, it can be labor intensive at time, poor method for establishing cause and effect relationship. Another limitations are observer bias. Observer may interrupt behavior based on personal views. People may change their behavior when they know they are being watched, and time consuming and sometimes difficult to access natural settings. So these are some limitations also there. Now that we have understood how psychologists observe, let's move on the another powerful method, the experimental method, where psychologists test cause and effect relationship. So the second method is experimental method. Experiments are conducted to find out whether one variable cause a change in another. It means experiments are generally conducted to establish cause and effect relationship between two or more variables in a controlled setting. Independent variables are manipulated and their effects are measured on the dependent variable. Okay, so psychologists create a controlled environment where they can manipulate variables and measure their effect. Purposes to study cause and effect relationship between variables. There are key terms: independent variable, dependent variable and control group or irrelevant variable also there. So basically independent variable, that one that is manipulated. Dependent variable is the one that is measured. There are two group also, control group and experimental group. Control group is does not receive the treatment and experimental group receive the treatment. So basically experimental group is involved in independent variable. Okay, there are another variable, irrelevant variable is also there. So irrelevant variable is which variable just so basically there are three variables: independent variable, dependent variable and irrelevant variable. For example, suppose we want to study whether listening to music improve memory. Okay, clear everybody? Independent variable, listening to music. Dependent variable, performance on memory test. We take two groups of students. One group of studies with music, experimental group. One group studied without music, control group. Then we test both groups and compare their results. If the group with music perform better, we can say music may improve memory. How to conduct? Steps in an experiment. First of all, select participants randomly, divide them into control and experimental group, apply the independent variable to one group and measure the dependent variable in both groups. Analyze results and data, draw conclusion. Okay, so advantage or merits, the optimal method of establishing cause and effect relationship between more variables helps to establish cause and effect. Control setting ensure accuracy and reliability. Results can be replicated. The extraneous variable can be controlled, thus no scope for an alternative explanation. And demerits are, or limitations, sometimes ethical concern prevents certain experiments. Lab setting may feel unnatural, so behavior may change. Not all variables can be controlled, especially in real life setting. Okay, clear? Another demerits are the experimental bias may affect the and the authenticity of the experiment. So these are some limitations. Okay, we will discuss quick comparison between two methods, observation versus experimental method. Feature of purpose. Observational method purpose is basically describe behavior and experimental method purpose is establish cause and effect relationship. Setting is observation method control or natural environment both, but experimental method usually controlled environment. Researcher role, may observer passively and in experimental method observer is actively manipulated. Control over variables, low to moderate and high. Example, watching kids play in park, testing if music improve memory. So testing if music improve memory, this is the example of experimental method, and watching kids play in park, this is an example of observational method. Hope so clear. If you have any doubt, you ping me and contact me, definitely no problem. Some application in real life also we will discuss. Teachers observe a student in class to identify learning difficulties. Psychologists conduct experiments to test effectiveness of therapies. Campaigns test and effectiveness by changing one element like color or message. Okay. So student, today we explored what is observation method, both naturalistic and control, what is experimental method with cause and effect, real life example, advantages or limitations of both. So both methods are essential to psychology. Observation help us understand what happened and experiments help us understand why it happened. So in the next lecture we will move on the correlation method, survey method and case study method. Until then, keep observing and questioning that. So if you have any doubt, you contact me anytime. Thank you for watching and see you soon. Bye bye.